Alternate Board Member Zito,
Here.
Vice Chair Garcia,
Here.
Chairman Lewis.
Here, thank you. We have a few anticipated alternates joining us and a few absences, and so we will go right along. We will now rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we will have the approval of our agenda. To our CEO, Greg Wade, do you have any changes to the agenda?
No changes.
Do we need a motion to approve this agenda or was that previous minutes? Okay. I will move forward with our public comment. Move on. Speaker. Yes, John?
We have one speaker, John Motion.
Hello, board members, CEA staff. My name is John Mosier. I'm from San Marcos. I'm currently one of the members of our Community Advisory Committee, which I want to thank you for reappointing me for the next 2 years. I wanted to put out a shout of support for the Regional Energy Academy that some of us just went through. CEA is a sponsor of it, and it's a very good program. There was 4 different days, full days that we went all around the county in specific spots. Very good background on energy. One of the stops was at SDG&E, up at their training and also their command center. And so they took us in to see their actual room where they trace all the energy coming in and out of the county. It's impressive. It's a massive room. It's 2 or 3 stories high with their screens. And then between that and then going down to the airport, and then the last day we went to UCSD to look at their cogen facilities, and then back to SDG&E where they took us into their command center for like wildfire events. So we got to be in a room where they actually track and trace this and meet the meteorologists, put a lot of their current programs in place. But I just want to say it's very worthwhile. I'm glad CEA is a sponsor, and I want to put out support to continue to be a sponsor. It's very good for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right.
If I could, I just wanted to also point out that our CAC chair, Deborah Shade, also participated, as did Tiffany Reynolds, her staff member, went through that academy.
Sounds like a great opportunity. Thank you for representing there. Now we'll move on to any board comments and announcements. I'll just share that I'm very excited, looking forward to tomorrow. This Friday, we have a sponsorship opportunity with Department of Arena. Myself and Vice Chair Garcia are going to have the opportunity to represent CEA on the court for some fun ceremony, but we'll also have staff there doing some education and outreach about CEA and its programs. And so it's a great opportunity for us to continue to build those relationships and that awareness of our organization and programs. Do we have a motion to have approval of the minutes? I'll move. Okay. I'll go ahead and second that. Please vote.
Board Member Nunes,
Yes.
alternate Board Member Zito,
Here.
Vice Chair Garcia,
Yes.
Chairman Lewis.
Yes, thank you. Next, we'll move on to our presentations. We'll be receiving a presentation on BESS standards from San Diego Fire and Rescue Battalion Chief Robert Resende.
If I could just, by way of further introduction, as the board may recall, we had been started an informational series of workshops, or not workshops, presentations on battery storage, particularly utility scale, and had a tour of one of SDG&E's battery projects in the city. And this is continuing on with that discussion. We're really happy to have Robert Zendy here. He's considered a regional expert now in this field, and we're happy to have him here. So Mr. King here.
Thank you for that. Chair, board members, staff, thank you for having me. My name is Robert Zendy, I'm the battalion chief of the City of San Diego Fire Rescue Department, and I am currently the Alternative Energy Emergency Response Coordinator for the County of San Diego. I'm going to be quick with this presentation, hopefully, so that it leaves time for Q&A. I'm here to give you a little bit of an update of where we stand with battery energy storage system safety and some of the updates we've gone through both nationally and locally. So everything that it goes into operating a battery storage system safely is everything about the system, right? It's not just the batteries, but it's everything from the equipment that needs to be certified to the emergency response plans that need to be included as part of the construction of the system, the training and resources that are required now by code standards to actually provide training to your first responders when these systems are put into place, the design meeting all of the current applicable codes and standards. And then today, our industry, both the fire service as well as the industry of battery energy storage system, has continuously to evolve and continuously to increase its safety applications and standards and testing the battery energy storage system. Codes and standards are going to touch everything you see here, in addition to some of the things you can't see here. Everything from the connection to the grid, the electrical connectivity, the overall installation, the containers themselves, the battery themselves, the connections within the system. Everything is regulated through some type of code, whether it's international fire code, NFPA standard, and a variety of other industry standards like National Testing Laboratories, UL, and those standards. And these standards are continuously being updated. The most recent standard of the NFPA 855 just went into effect in January of this year, which is a significant improvement from previous standards. Here's a bunch of standards. I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but there's all the different ways that these energy storage systems have to pass through rigorous testing, both from explosive testing, fire testing, all the different standards that are in place to ensure that the battery energy storage systems operate as designed. And if they fail as designed. From a global grid scale perspective, relative to the amount of gigawatt hours that have been implemented in the world, the trend of incidents, thankfully, is going down. Of course, here in San Diego County, we unfortunately had a series of events that happened. 3 of them that happened in one calendar year, which was extremely unusual. But all in all, from a global perspective of application, the sheer volume of battery energy storage systems that are going in throughout the state of California, our rate of incidence is going down as the technology improves. We have several battery energy system lessons learned that have been applied to the new standards. This includes everything from the explosive event that happened in Arizona that injured 2 firefighters, location called Surprise, Arizona, to the incidents that occurred here in San Diego County, the Otay Mesa, Escondido, Valley Center incidents that occurred around 2024, along with a variety of different transportation incidents that we have been involved in. We've learned a significant amount of procedures, how to properly respond, how to keep the public safe, as well as how to mitigate and then work through the long, rigorous process that is to decommission these sites. The current code is to include suppression systems within the containers. Is actually, we're moving away from water. Water is detrimental to batteries, so most of the new containers you can see are designed to either burn in place by design, or they will use some other type of smoke and gas detections to identify early failures and prevent the catastrophic event from occurring. Again, all the devices and systems have to meet UL standards for central stations and NFPA 72, which is basically identifying a station that will alert both the fire department and the industry that there's a failure at that facility. Well, us in the fire department would be the first ones that are arriving at these incidents, and thankfully, the new code requires an emergency response plan to be available to us. So when the first responders arrive, they have basically a checklist of things that need to occur to render the incident as safe as possible. The emergency response plan also includes what to expect as far as hazards associated with the first responder, so we know how to act safely around those systems. We use those to both prepare and train for the incidents as well as during the incident to know that our first responders are prepared with the checklist of things that they need to do. Site representatives are required to be available to respond immediately on a phone line, and then also to respond to the incident as the failure is occurring, so that we have a technician responding to the site, that we have an expert that knows how to operate their systems in place. These are all things that are new to the code. In 2020, these things were not in place. So these failures that occurred for incidents that were installed prior to 2020, these safety mechanisms were not in place. They have been put in place because of all the lessons that we've learned through failures. We will establish a unified command with both the facility as well as the fire department, along with EPA and environmental health folks from the county, which is what we did in Otay Mesa. That significantly helps streamline the process. And now that we've had some practice with it, we've gotten a lot better at integrating all the stakeholders in that response. And then there are a large-scale fire testing that is required currently by code for the battery technology. So in other words, they take these battery systems out into the desert and purposely fail them into failure and into fire to see what happens, to ensure that there's no off-site consequences. So they take measurements within certain distances of the container and make sure that they pass a certain standard that says you will not have an off-site consequence to the failure. There are certain EPA best fact sheets that establish an initial isolation zone of 330 feet in all directions. That's our first initial standard that we operate in. And then we start positioning our responders upwind and uphill, establishing these command posts upwind and uphill. And we start to assess for further atmospheric monitoring and detection and hazard analysis, making sure that we are aware of all the consequences that are happening downwind, and if anything is happening off-site that we can track. Everything from water runoff to fluid modeling and atmospheric monitoring is all things that we can provide to assist with public safety. The IAFC, the International Association of Fire Chiefs, have also weighed in. I'm a member of the battery subcommittee for the IAFC, and we have a series of different recommendations for the fire service to understand what the response should look like, what their hazard is. As a reminder, basically, firefighters are just hazard mitigators. That's what we're constantly assessing a hazard and trying to come up with a way of mitigating that hazard. It's not always fire, right? Sometimes it's medical, sometimes it's traffic accidents, sometimes it's battery fire, sometimes it's hazardous materials event. And so the best thing we can do is provide firefighters with the understanding and understanding of what that hazard looks like, so they can do the best decisions to mitigate the consequences of those hazards, and that's what the IAFC does. The good news is past incidents demonstrate that fires are contained within the facility and air quality in the neighboring areas remains at safe levels. So we've had some significant incidents, including one here in San Diego. During the Otay Mesa incident, our hazmat team responded and deployed what we call area monitoring throughout the entire location. So we did a 360-degree monitoring of the facility, and we did not detect any significant toxic gases being emitted outside of the footprint of that area. So we went outside the footprint, continued to do measuring. We also measured water runoff, and the water runoff came out as below the California standards considered to be contaminated water. So those are all good news. Similar results occurred in other incidents throughout the state, in some areas in New York, where they did the exact same type of atmospheric monitoring and consistently coming back with, we do not see a significant toxicity leaving the facility. Now, that's not to say that smoke is not toxic, right? All smoke is toxic. And smoke from any fire, whether it's a warehouse fire or a house fire or a car fire, will travel. It will travel distances, and you should try to stay away from smoke in general. What we're saying with this statement is we have not seen a difference in the battery energy storage system fire versus a warehouse fire. We're seeing the same type of constituents downwind. We still recommend sometimes you'll see us recommending a shelter in place order if there's a large warehouse fire in your neighborhoods, because we don't want people to lose smoke. I mentioned this, that the water quality in the areas have not elevated. We do see trace metals in water runoff of these fires, but the trace metals fall below the EPA standards, and the California standards will be considered contaminated water. So the trace metals are there, but they don't reach any levels concerning health. Mention that just now. The commitment from local authorities for us for these projects is the design, emergency response, and training. And so the battery energy storage system industry has improved their communication with the first responders and communicating with firefighters, communicating with your authority having jurisdiction and your fire marshals. They're including us much earlier in the design and development of the projects, so that we can have a say in what that looks like. And we can have a say in what that emergency response is going to look like. And then that they need to provide training for us. And this is all in the new fire code that requires them to provide training to the local fire departments, which is good, which is really good. A change from the past. So I'll stop there. Like I said, I didn't want to go I can talk about this stuff for 8 hours. So keeping it to 15 minutes is hard.
I appreciate that, and we all do. Are there any questions from the board this time?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Very interesting information, and of course, with any new technology, there's things to learn. I guess one question I had with respect to the requirements, and this is perhaps more of a code thing than a fire safety thing, but as the learnings you've gone on, you know, when these facilities are being proposed in different areas, there's a lot of uproar and a lot of unknown about what the potential risks are. So are there actually standards being developed about, I saw something out there with the response, you guys are supposed to stay 300 feet away, right? So does it mean these facilities can't be placed within 300 feet of something else, or is that being looked at?
Yeah, the code does not stipulate that specific distance because these systems are designed to operate safely, right? So the idea is, I believe the code states it's 50 foot, a minimum distance from a neighboring building. Now, that does not mean that your fire marshal or your authority having jurisdiction can't speak up and say that our local jurisdiction requires greater distances. And that's up to the fire marshal usually, or the fire chief, that is the authority having jurisdiction for your area. Most of these facilities are being built with significantly bigger footprints than even the code requires. For example, most of the facilities that we've had, for example, downtown in downtown San Diego, so a fairly concentrated area, they have a minimum of 100 feet from even the outer wall of their facilities. Okay, so the furthest container, if you look on that line, the furthest container is 100 feet away from the barrier or the wall that's the circumference of the facility. And that's to build a little bit of a cushion for us to make sure that if there's any failure, you have an initial 100-foot clearance, and then typically there's another distance outside of that facility to the neighboring building. Does that mean that we're not going to create a catastrophic failure? You're not going to need a shelter-in-place order? No, we probably will. And I go back to, as an example, any type of industrial fire or industrial warehouse fire is going to require potentially a shelter-in-place or evacuation, depending on what the constituents of that industry is, what's on fire, where's the smoke going. So we look at these as basically industrial fires, and we have them throughout the county. And unfortunately, at times we do have to do a shelter-in-place or evacuation order for a catastrophic failure. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, that answers my question. I mean, it's not precise, but it's the reality. And I'm just wondering if I look at, you know, for example, all of the coastal part of San Diego, which is heavily developed, it seems like the probability of having any reasonable battery storage in those areas is very challenging, except for very few limited cases, I think.
Yeah, and I wouldn't disagree. I think that it's also a matter of scope of like what's the size. So a lot of the risk increases with the amount of energy that's been stored. Right. So if you have a very small, what's called microgrids, which are all over the place, If you go to parking lots, that are charging electric vehicles, that's a microgrid. You will look behind Walmart's and Target's, there's usually a microgrid behind there. But those carry a much lower amount of energy density, so if they do fail, their failure is way smaller and much less of a problem than say something as big as that, which is probably powering a couple 100,000 homes with that. So when it's that volume, you're right. On the coastal side, I don't think I'd expect something this big, but one container of it.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. And just for clarity, since you use the term, I mean, does it really change the energy density or just the overall energy capacity? Because you could put one of these trailers in a smaller situation, it's still the same density, it's just a lot smaller area, or they actually have different amounts of density.
Yeah, make models have different energy densities.
Okay.
So some containers are 24, some are 40, some are 56 feet. Some have different chemistries that concentrate more energy density than others. So make model matters.
Right.
But you're right, if there's one container, that's the amount of energy density that's going to be there. But when you have so many containers next to each other, our concern is always the propagation,
Right.
more so than the one.
Thank you for that, appreciate it.
I particularly appreciated the information about the type of toxic material that is potential risk for these fires, that it's not necessarily different from other warehouse fires or industrial fires. I am curious if there is an increased risk of fire for these facilities versus a warehouse facility. Would you be able to tell us offhand, is there a higher risk at a battery storage facility than there is at a warehouse for a fire?
I think the question I would ask is what type of warehouse, because that really matters, right? If you have an anhydrous ammonia facility that's doing meat packing for freezing and you have a failure there, that is a massively bigger risk than a battery energy storage system. But if you have a warehouse full of cardboard boxes, then it's still a risk, you've got a lot of smoke, but you're not going to have the same risk. So the type of warehouse, the type of industry that's being worked on is what really makes the difference.
And to clarify, the smoke that is emitted is from a battery storage fire isn't more toxic or has like a certain type of chemical makeup that's a riskier fallout to the public than something like a cardboard warehouse fire.
Of course, it would be different, and there are different hazards. And so most of the chemical hazards in the battery energy storage system failure, actually, because of the fire, typically burns up in the fire, and they're lighter than air, so they kind of go up and away. Which is why we haven't seen those from a 100-foot distance, for example. We're not picking anything up because the hydrogen gas and all the other chemicals that are coming out are coming kind of up and out. There is still to be seen and to be determined what the particulates, like the metal particulates, what that looks like when that drops from the sky, right? But there's metal particulates in any warehouse fire as well. Different types of metals in different types of fires, and it's really hard to make a overall statement that somehow this is better, they're different. And then continuous monitoring, we monitor soil samples and things like that as well to ensure that there's what the offsite consequences might be.
And as you know, we try to prepare for any emergency, thinking for the options to shelter in place for any type of metal or chemical fallout from these types of fires. Horrible, of course, we don't want to think of that happening, but as you're sharing, there's been some significant learning experiences that we've had over the past couple of years. I appreciate you being able to share your knowledge with us. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I think that concludes the presentations. If there's no further questions, I think we're all set. Thank you so much, dear.
Thanks for having me.
Next, we'll move on to our consent calendar. Do you have any speakers on our consent calendar?
We don't have any speakers.
Okay, I'd like to receive a motion to approve our consent calendar.
I'll move.
We have a motion and a second. Please do a roll call vote.
Board Member Nunez,
Yes.
alternate Board Member Zito,
Yes.
Vice Chair Garcia,
Yes.
Chairman Lennox.
Yes. Thank you. Now we'll move along to reports from our CEO, Greg Wade.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. This is the CEO Operational Administrative Report. So just giving the update on the statistics for our member agencies. You see here the breakdown by city of the accounts enrolled in the various products that we offer. We're currently up to 256,531 total customer accounts. We still are maintaining 93% participation rate. And there you can see the breakdown for the 50% renewable clean impact product, as well as the green impact 100% renewable product. And then our default product, is which most customers are enrolled. The clean impact product is going up slightly by virtue of our rate relief credit in part, which saw about 55 opt-downs in the month of February as a result of that rate relief credit. The staff continues to be actively engaged in community events, participating in the events that you see here on the screen. I'm not going to outline or highlight any of them in particular, but we are trying to get to all of our member agencies in the various outreach events that we can participate in. We have several more coming up in the next month. As a result of it being Earth Month and Earth Day, you can see there quite a few events upcoming, including one of our regular presentations to a member agency, the City of Del Mar, on April 21st. So these are the events that all of our board members are encouraged to attend as well if they so choose, and it's a good way to see some of the things going on in our community. Our communities, rather. Just an update on our Solar Plus and Battery Bonus programs. You can see there the breakdown in the Solar Plus program, the Battery Plus solar system, the Solar Plus Connect, which is the SBID funded side of the program, as well as our Battery Bonus program, which had a significant enrollment for our Connect program that was SBID funded. You can see the progress we're making on the installation of those 54 applicants on the Battery Bonus project or program. This again is just a reminder of the funding that we were able to secure for those customers within those breakdown by the member agency. Our Keep Smart Savers program has sort of plateaued at 50 customers. We did extend the coverage for any rate difference for this next fiscal year to study this and see how well the participants respond to event days. So this is still ongoing, and we hope to see a little bit more enrollment so we can get a better picture as to how this program is working out for decreasing the amount of energy used during peak demand. Just a recruitment update. We have selected members or employees rather for each of the 5 positions that we've recruited. There are offers accepted for all 5 of those positions, and we have start dates tentatively for 4 of the 5 as May 19th, and 1 of the 5 on June 1st. And final offers have been accepted by 2 of the 5, and so we're excited to bring those folks on. There were, as reported at the last board meeting, a lot of interest in these positions. In one of the positions, we received 138 applications. So good to see that we have interested people, and the people that was selected came from a highly qualified pool of candidates. Our staff participated in a tour of the Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant on March 6th. It was attended and put together by CalCCA, and our staff members who were present were Caitlin Yee and Sylvia Alcaraz. So happy to see that we had some participation there, and they were impressed by the facility. I will say that. It's a very important facility for our carbon-free product in the state. You can see there that 9% of the state's total electricity and 17% of its zero carbon electricity comes from this plant. Now, it was originally scheduled to discontinue in 2025. It has been officially extended into 2030, and as I've reported in the past, there are discussions, and we may yet see legislation in this legislative cycle to extend the life of this plant beyond 2030. So stay tuned for those developments. Just a word of celebration, I guess, is the way to put it. We are planning our 5-year anniversary celebration. We're looking to tentatively, but we do have a date planned for May 28th, immediately following this board meeting in May. We're looking at having presentations to some of our green impact champions at this event. We'll have statistics and results from those 5 years in terms of our ability to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, provide program benefits. And we're holding this event at the Agua Hedionda Lagoon Discovery Campus. We were able to take a small tour of that facility yesterday. For those who haven't been there, it's a beautiful facility overlooking the lagoon and has some, they host quite a bit of educational opportunities for our youth in the region. We were surrounded, I think, at all times by various groups of children that were enjoying the facility, and it really is a nice place to, if you have kids, take your kids, or if you just want to go and look at some of the features of this campus. It's a great place for that, as well as this event. So put that on your calendars. We'll continue to update the board as this gets planned further. And that concludes the CEO report.
Thank you, Greg. I'm really excited about some of our recent recruitment and lots of progress made. Turn it over to the board if there's any questions.
I don't have any questions, but I do want to say, Greg, thank you to you and Ralph for attending the League of California Cities San Diego Division, for presenting. We've heard great feedback, so thank you for doing that. I think you and the team are doing a great job being out in the community, so keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further comments. We'll move to our next item. Item 6, to consider adoption of resolution approving our fiscal year 25-26 Clean Energy Alliance Energy Programs Plan.
Thank you. I just wanted to introduce Caitlin McGee, who will be giving this update. This is a result of a lot of hard work by our staff, as well as our partner organization, Universidad Popular. A lot of effort, a lot of outreach, and Caitlin is going to present this item.
Good afternoon. I'm Caitlin McGee, Senior Key Accounts Program Manager here at Clean Energy Alliance. So the Energy Programs Plan was created as a direct result of the strategic plan that was adopted by the board in April 2025. The intention of this plan was to identify community needs, establish baseline data, and create a framework for programs to explore. This process has stretched over the last year and a half, with several approaches to community engagement, review of various data sources, and inventory of existing programs available throughout our region. We designed a multi-pronged approach to community engagement for this plan, collecting statistically accurate quantitative data through a community needs survey and holding several community workshops throughout our service territory to gather qualitative data. The Energy Alliance partnered with True North Research, which is a local full-service research firm with focus on government agencies. The survey ran for approximately 2 weeks with multiple methods for participation and was conducted in both English and Spanish. The key findings and full report were presented to the board back in April 2025. It's also attached to the agenda packet today. Staff also partnered with Universidad Popular for the in-person community workshops. So I'll have Natalie Aguilar, their community educator, to cover the next few slides. Need some help with this. Awesome, thank you, Caitlin.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, CAA board members. I'm Natalia Aguilar, community educator with Universidad Popular, here to talk about the community workshops. So a little bit about us. Universidad Popular is a community-based grassroots organization based here in North County, San Diego. Our purpose is to capture community knowledge, foster appreciation for traditional knowledge, while strengthening family and community unity to build power. We do this using the popular education method. So from September to November 2025, we hosted 7 workshops across the CEA service area. We had roundtable discussion style focus groups in both English and Spanish on 5 energy topics. So here's the table with the community workshops. The first one we had was on September 8th in Escondido. We had discussion groups in both English and Spanish here. We had 36 attendees in San Marcos. We had following week, September 15th, discussion groups as well in English and Spanish. This was our highest attended event. We had 88 people that day. I remember running around back and forth. And these first two workshops were held during our standing meeting times for our citizenship and civic education classes that were held that are still held from 5 to 7 p.m. in the evenings. And so we kept that model for the workshops. The third workshop was held on September 17th in Carlsbad. We had discussion groups both in English and Spanish there as well. 19 attendees that day. And then the following week, September 24th, we had a Zoom workshop that had both sessions in English and Spanish. We had 14 attendees there. And then in October, we started our second set of workshops, first in Vista at the Vista Civic Center. We had discussion groups both in English and Spanish there as well, and had 22 attendees. And then the following month, November 5th, we had a workshop in Oceanside at the Libby Lake Community Resource Center with discussion groups as well, both in English and Spanish, with 19 attendees. And then we concluded the workshops in Solana Beach with the Solana Beach Del Mar workshop at the Solana Beach City Council chambers. And there we just had one discussion group in English and had 13 attendees. In total, we had 211 attendees and 26 discussion groups. Thank you to everyone that made these workshops a success, including CEA staff, CEA board members, CEA Community Advisory Committee members, our UP team, and the community members who accompanied us. So now moving on to the topics, we had 5 guided discussion topics. First was understanding customer priorities. Second was identifying energy-related issues and barriers. Third was understanding energy usage and decision-making. Fourth was exploring past and future energy improvements. And fifth was gauging awareness of CEA programs. The format of the workshops was that first we had introduction for both UP and CEA. Then we moved into the roundtable discussions. Each roundtable had a focus group with 1 facilitator, or 2 in some cases. And this facilitator walked through the guide and as well as took notes. So now moving on to the key insights. From November to December of last year, we reviewed and analyzed the qualitative data from the community workshops. Here's what emerged. First was that affordability emerged as a leading priority among participants across all of the cities. So following were energy efficiency, reliability, and access. And affordability was also referred to as concern for excessive costs, higher costs, and in relation to the rising costs of living in the region. The second key insight was that participants identified several barriers to energy improvements, including tenancy status. For example, in Escondido, community members mentioned that as renters, the quality as well as the efficiency of their appliances depended on their landlords, and as a result, they were limited on the upgrades that they can make. And this was a similar facet amongst all the other cities. Also on the Zoom meeting, renters mentioned lack of engagement with landlords whenever they had solar installed in their apartments. Another barrier that was identified was high energy costs, outdated appliances, insufficient financial resources, unfamiliarity with available programs and technologies, and limited knowledge about innovation. So when discussing energy-related issues and barriers, in addition to the question about what programs the CEA have, there were also general questions such as how do we upgrade to solar? What is clean energy? What is the difference between non-renewable and renewable energy? And also, what is the impact of our energy use and consumption on the environment? So people also had more general questions. Third, few individuals are familiar with the details of their energy bills, and even fewer actively monitor their energy consumption. Few community members, other than knowing what they need to pay for that month, are not familiar with how to comprehensively read their energy bills. As a result, workshops and presentations on how to read these energy bills were released. In addition, those who monitored their consumption identified their energy bills as the number way in tracking this energy use. Fourth, despite limited knowledge on how to read energy bills and the lack of familiarity with programs and technologies, community members still want and pursue upgrades and are motivated to. Workshop participants consistently prioritized energy-focused initiatives, including upgrading to LED lighting, installing solar panels, and improving insulation. While engaging in energy-saving habits, community members also identified the barriers, which were similar to those identified in the key insight number 2 of high upfront costs, information gaps, and limited access. And as a result, the requests were more incentives, multilingual resources, renter-friendly programs, and workshops. And then the fifth key insight was that workshop participants reported limited or no awareness of CEA prior to attending the presentation. And this was clear throughout the workshop discussions. For most people, this was the first time that they had heard about CEA. And as a result, they had questions, such as what is the difference between CEA and SDG&E? What are the benefits of CEA over SDG? While going through the 5 discussion topics, additional information regarding CEA, programs, clean energy, and technologies was requested. Throughout the discussions, respondents requested diverse and creative methods of sharing information and creating educational opportunities, such as workshops and personal guidance. And that's it. This is a quick recap on the community workshops. I could also keep going. Thank you. This concludes my portion of the presentation. We will be here to answer any questions that you might have. I will hand it back off to Caitlin.
Natalie. All right, so in addition to all of our community engagement and data collecting, we also review each of our member cities' climate action plans. This program's plan is really key to helping CEA meet our 2035 100% renewable goal, but also support our member cities in any energy goals they have established in their action plans. We also surveyed many of our staff contacts at each member cities and have discussions to further understand their individual priorities. And then lastly, we engaged the Community Advisory Committee throughout the process, reviewed many of their subcommittee reports to incorporate, and they also have opportunity to review the draft program plan at their last meeting in February. Staff also did a deep dive on customer demographics and load data, pulling information from the U.S. Census Bureau and using our customer database and load information. All of this information was consolidated into nearly 20 charts and graphs throughout the plan, and were used to inform the final program recommendations. This is just an example of one of those charts. So before I jump into the recommended programs, I really want to mention that this plan is intended to serve more as a roadmap for a work plan for where CEA staff should invest their resources and time and further research each recommendation. This is not a plan approving every program established in recommendations. Each program will come back to the board for individual approval and associated impacts and budget.
Before, sorry to interrupt, before we go into the programs, I'm kind of thinking, since it seems like we've done a lot of work, and I'm thinking about our member cities and what it looks like. So this is a question either for you, Kaylin, or Universidad Popular. What do you see? What are you finding in terms of similarities amongst the cities? Are they very similar? Are there differences? I'm just trying to get a sense of, did we uncover anything that we didn't already know, or what does it look like for our member cities?
Yeah, my high level sense of things is there's nothing earth shattering that we didn't already kind of across the board. Affordability is at the forefront for all of our customers. There's a lot of interest in clean energy and programs, but what comes first is the price or cost savings. More significantly, what we've heard consistently, which is pretty common, is how do renters take advantage of these programs and how do they get their landlords excited about these programs? And I would say at least through workshops, and we can probably get to this again in deeper questions at the end of the presentation, but I would say our workshops primarily in Escondido, San Marcos, and Vista were really focused on how do I get my landlord to care about energy efficiency and how do I actually receive the benefit of those improvements. So those are my high level takeaways.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful because obviously even within a city like San Marcos, I see the big disparity, right? Depending on what part of the city you're in, what the needs are, and really, and I think we even see it on this board in terms of what the conversation may look like depending on what city we might be in or what part of the city. And so I just want to make sure that I'm seeing that consistently in terms of how we're responding to those needs. And so I do appreciate that all of this work has been done and that we're actively looking at the similarities and obviously the differences.
Yeah, I'll mention that the final attachment to the energy programs plan is the full analysis that was put together following the workshops. So there is a great summary of which topics each individual city was very vocal about. I'll also say through this process, I was slightly surprised to find through the data there's not much of an appetite for electric vehicle infrastructure or incentives across our service territory, and a need for very basic education on energy bills, such as time of use periods, right? Those are great basic tools to help customers save money. So we've divided our program recommendations into 4 pillars. The first being clean energy supply and grid resilience, building electrification and energy efficiency, transportation and electrification, and local workforce and community education. Through this process, staff created a framework to analyze the potential impact of each program recommendation to see its procurement, revenue, and the financial feasibility. This high-level business case analysis was organized using a software style scorecard, so it's color-coded. Here on the slide, we show the 4 impact types with a description of what they are and how we look at them, and kind of a high level of an example for each category. The deep green color being the strongest positive impact to CEA, red being a strong negative impact to CEA, and then white, or white circle meaning no foreseeable impact. All right, program recommendations, fun part. So and I probably won't read all of these out there in the agenda packet as well. But for pillar 1 on clean energy supply and grid resiliency, much of this is focused on distributed energy resources. And you see those first 2 boxes are actual programs we have active now and are in the phase of launching for pushing. So solar and battery storage very key to the goals here, and then in addition, establishing community resiliency hubs, creating additional demand response programs, and looking at load flexibility, virtual power plants, and potentially discounted rates for income qualified customers for 100% renewable energy. And in each of these slides, you'll see on the left, we have kind of the program bucket we will explore, trying to sort them in priority of timing, what we think is feasible for our own staff to research and dig into and think about program design. And then we have a brief description of what these buckets are, including, and then the target customer or agency organizations. Pillar 2, building electrification and energy efficiency. I may also make a note here that each of these program initiatives, again, are kind of high level. It doesn't mean the exact program under this bucket is something CEA will develop and establish 100% on our own. It's really a tool to list out opportunities to partner with existing agencies such as the San Diego Regional Energy Network, utilizing some of SDGs existing programs. So under this pillar, we have electrification incentives. This may be rebates or incentives for electric heat pump water heaters, induction cooktops, energy efficiency kits, refrigeration efficiency, and building electrification technical assistance. Pillar 3, transportation electrification, also looking at EV charger rebates, EV charging solutions for multifamily buildings, and demand response or virtual power plant type programs utilizing EV charging. And then also partnerships with our public agencies on their required shift to electric vehicles. Pillar 4, local workforce and community education. And through this process, like I mentioned, we just found that programs are exciting and there's a need for them, but they only go as far as customers knowing CEA exists. How do they read their bill? What are the components of that? And understanding everything that goes into it. So this pillar, I think, is really rooted in that foundational education as well. So here, looking at a clean energy equity fund, mostly dedicated to income qualified programs for innovative pilots, supporting local workforce training and pre-apprenticeship programs, identifying an opportunity for community innovation grants, and then again, focusing on that energy literacy and ongoing education. And lastly, before we jump into questions, I just want to acknowledge our CEA staff. our power supply team, regulatory, our programs team, and then most notably, Karen Gissel, our programs analyst, who really took the lead on the development of this plan. So it's staff's recommendation that the board adopt a resolution to approve the energy.
Anybody want to get any question about presentation and all for your participation? I want to see if you had any public comments on this item.
You don't have any comments on this item?
Thank you. I think we are going to have a robust board discussion on this. I'm a little sad to see we're missing so many members because it has been about 1.5 years that we've been monitoring this process. And there might be some modifications that we want to make as we look forward to implementing these programs. One of the areas that I want to have a bit of discussion on is about the distributed energy resources. And if maybe you could outline a little further for us, because I completely agree that renters are going to be impacted in a way that homeowners are not. Homeowners are going to have more access to programs than tenants who doesn't own property will. And so I just wanted to maybe get a bit more of a briefing from you on how the energy supply programs could directly impact those tenant customers.
Absolutely. I'll use our existing program, Solar Plus, as an example. So our program now offers solar and battery storage systems to residential customers. We also have a battery-only option if there's existing solar. And one of the really critical pieces of that program, one, if you are a homeowner, there is no upfront cost for participating in the program, so you're not paying cash upfront to the system. There's also no credit check, which has been a barrier historically for customers. And then also no lien on your. A piece of that program, though, is to allow renters to participate. So a renter can benefit directly from those systems as the account holder because the system is tied into the meter pending landlord approval. So that's one example.
Could I dig a little deeper there and could you explain to me what CEA staff's role would be as a liaison between the tenant, right, and basically the customer on that energy bill and the landlord who owns the property that would be modified with solar panels, for example. So, sometimes landlords can be hard to reach. Sometimes they can be disinterested in making improvements to the property, even if they're free or no cost to them. So how will CEA staff be able to help bridge that gap?
Absolutely. I think this is an opportunity to maybe further the program in the future, right? Currently, we partner with our program administrator, Participate Energy, and they have, and we have several community partners and local installers, so folks like Baker Electric, Low Solar. They're really handling the engagement between a tenant and landlord. But as we think about bringing on staff and additional resources to target community areas where we see opportunity to further push the program, that's somewhere where we can send resources.
Okay, so right now we have a framework that we're able to overcome those barriers. And so when we've had these community discussions and it's been expressed that, that a landlord doesn't want to make improvements to the property, what type of response can you give someone, a customer who's interested in these programs, and what type of reassurance can you give them that we're prepared to have those conversations with the property owner?
So I'll maybe shift to our Equitable Building Decarb grant that we received. And so kind of as I was mentioning, I wouldn't say that we're actively working in coordination with a renter or a homeowner to really help push the Solar Plus program forward in these scenarios. At the moment, most of the Solar Plus customers that have taken advantage of the program have used the Connect program, which was battery or very low cost solar and battery system. What we will be rolling out here in the next couple of months is the Equitable Building Deed Program, which really is a focus on getting out into the community, having those conversations with customers in pre-identified areas that are specifically in need of modernization, energy efficiency, and most susceptible to extreme weather conditions. And so through that grant, we've had the opportunity to bring on a program advisor who will be doing the actual in-person, sitting at the dinner table, walking through these opportunities on how to improve a home and increase energy efficiency. So although that will serve mostly the improvements covered under the EBD grant, it's also going to be an opportunity for us to now include the Social Plus program, for example, as a piece to pair with that and actually ask there to help us along the way.
Okay, interested in learning more about that. And I also share my support with workforce and community education, although I really do see that providing the infrastructure, right, to reduce costs and provide those sustainability programs comes at a higher, provides a higher value than education alone. And I also see that the discounted green impact rate for income qualified customers, and that's something that can directly impact our customers depending on their status. So I'll turn it over to our board members and see what other questions and environment we can provide for these recommendations.
Thanks for the presentation. Also, thanks for the, I think for the November workshop in Solana Beach, and I recognize several people out there, so thank you for coming up with my town and doing a great job on the workshop in Solana Beach. I guess now the downside is my memory isn't what it used to be, but one of the questions I had from the workshop was how much probing into the prioritization of reliability in this context. So for example, I kind of have, it doesn't show up in this wording here, but I kind of have a feeling that rolling brownouts would become much more common. That would be of concern to our constituents. Is that something that we explored in any of these workshops?
Hear that, and also I'll just invite Marcella and Natalie to jump in at any time if they want to add more about the community workshops, or if you have any specific questions about the community workshops.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just I just think it's just acknowledging there's some things I think in this data that may not be called out that are assumed, right? People start losing power every few weeks, that will suddenly become a top concern. Just something to be aware of. And one of the reasons I know this personally is that my sister who is in the Sacramento area, it does go through brownouts on a pretty regular basis, and it was a big incentive for her to put in a solar battery system because now she can survive brownouts, right? Without much of a problem. The other one, just sort of, flashing onto the chair's comments too, of just, I do think we're going to have to be dynamic in this and understand changing. Like one of the things that's that might be coming along that I found very interesting, and it's also continuing to expose how much I get annoyed by our current world, because I saw some information about possibly, what do they call balcony solar, and maybe some state legislation that might happen in this space. Of course, now whenever I go on social media, I get all sorts of advertisements for solar. But which is the one part, but realistically, maybe to the point of being able to facilitate those renters, if that becomes a reality, it seems like that's something we should definitely be looking into as a possible program that we could participate in. I don't know if that's incorporated in any one of these, but it's not allowed right now. So.
It's on our agenda. That's why the program initiatives feel very broad. They're not intended to be specific programs to roll out in the next month, right? This is kind of permission orders for staff to get deeper, see what we can do and what that timeline might look like, what the program design look like with our customer load. Developing solar is in one of these buckets and something that we are watching.
Okay, great. And one of the other things I was talking a little bit, with Craig a little bit about this too, just I think, advocating, I find it very curious. I kind of understand why, but If you have battery storage at this point, you're not allowed to both import and export to the grid, right? You can import and use locally, or you can generate locally and export to the grid, but you can't do both. And, grid reliability is a key concern of us, being able to do smaller locations, enabling, like for someone, for me, it's like, yeah, I could throw another battery in my system and possibly pull that from the grid when it's really low demand, and put it back into the grid when it's really high demand. And that's just increased grid reliability, but it's not currently allowed. So I think that's something that we might want to consider also advocating for going forward, just being able to do that, because I'm not sure what other side effects might happen, but that's just something I noticed, because I think it's great. I'm a big fan of local grid storage and local grid reliability as well. And if you ever, the last comment being, again, thanks, is that if you ever solve the utility low reading, get under and let me know, because I'm a really smart guy. I'm not sure I can figure out the do it either, so.
Vice Chair Garcia, member Diggins.
I would like to, if you could, just to respond to some of the questions about multifamily and providing benefit there. One thing that has been a challenge is when you talk to a residential apartment owner, how you translate those benefits if they're interested in solar to the tenants. And that's something we're looking at. One of the things we've encountered, it might be a little bit easier potentially on an HOA basis, where certain developers are willing to construct on-site improvements, for example, carports under which cars can park, which would be a solar canopy, but also exploring ways that maybe there's a creative way to provide funding to the HOA for certain benefits to the entire HOA organization. It's challenging at best, but we are looking into it. And as Board Member Zito just mentioned, we constantly are with our community advisory committee. This comes up about how can we benefit renters in multifamily rental situations, or even single family rental. And it is challenging, but we are looking at ways to explore that. And perhaps through our Solar Plus business program, which does cover multifamily, we might be able to come up with some options. But on the balcony solar, there is no current UL rating for that. It's not currently allowed. There's some interconnection issues, but that doesn't mean it might not be around the corner. So if we can learn from our European examples.
I'll add to that as well. Our new Solar Plus business program improves on this, where we have an actual lease payment to the landlord to incentivize adding the solar and battery to their buildings now as well.
I have two comments, Chair. Just, I want to say that, I'm going to add to the concern, right? Affordability is a big issue, and, I do think that we need to stay on top of how we can eliminate some of the barriers for our renters. So I want to make sure that we continue to have that conversation and see how we can add to our programs. And then the other comment I want to say, I was really glad to see Board Member Zito here today, because I attended the Solana Beach workshop, and as I remember, you have a spreadsheet that tracks, and you were going to share that with the rest of us.
Sorry, as I said, my memory isn't so good. If you go to the details, I'd be more happy to look it back up. Yeah, I forgot at this point, but you have you have lots of spreadsheets.
Can I get a bit of a timeline on our next review here? I really appreciate that we're taking a broad look. We're gonna have staff be given directions so that we can drill down a little bit deeper and create some more specific plans and programs. What are some of our next steps?
So I think one of the next steps is that through our upcoming budget cycle is to look at where we can, if possible, potentially bring back an item for board discussion as to how the program funds might be allocated to priority pillars of this program or energy program plan. that would be something that would be a next step and get your feedback on that. So we are entering the budget cycle. We will be coming to the board in May with preliminary budget and the community advisory committee in June and then back to you in June. So that I see as a logical next step. And if there are programs based on the questions that have been raised to you, if there are specific programs that come up that we think might have some value, we bring those forward on a case-by-case basis. But I think that would be the next step with respect to the plan as a whole, in terms of getting more into the detail about how we prioritize the programs that have been identified through this process.
So would you say that the next, heard by the board would be June or August?
I would think that there would be at least a preliminary discussion at the May budget discussion, and then following in that in June. I don't think there needs to be, we've already sort of set out a global budgeting of programs in our budget. Really what we need is, beyond that, is a little more detail as to how that might be allocated. So it could be in the next, beginning in May through June and July, and going into the fall as well.
I appreciate the recommendations. I'm wondering if there's interest from the board of developing a subcommittee action on this. The board's oversight is limited to when these public discussions are held, but a working group could allow us to bring our insights and expertise closer to the development of the programs. I think that this is important as well because we've done a good amount of community outreach. Really appreciate Inez and all of the members of the University of Popular for helping us to reach into the public a little bit more. I think that this process deserves a lot of attention before we bring back more established programs to the full board. I see that we could do everything from review our previous survey that we've conducted to take a look at the recommendations and try to reconcile the community feedback with those recommendations. So I'm not sure if there'd be any member who'd like to join me, maybe in the month of April before the budget session in May, to meet with staff and to have a further review of the programs and just to ensure that there is cohesion. Perhaps Member Inez, you would be able to join me on a working group in that capacity if the rest of the board would allow it. That way we can start to really hit the ground running when the programs are brought to the board, that there's cohesion between the community inputs, the staff workflows, and then of course the representative recommendations. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I would certainly be interested in participating and following this thread. I agree. It's also very important for us to meet the need. So I'm definitely interested. I'm trying to think through, is this something that we would be looking to do some sort of public workshop, some sort of, what are you thinking, Chair, that we would do?
I would say that we can meet virtually and join staff in the review of these programs before they're brought to the board as a subcommittee on the topic of our energy, our Clean Energy Alliance programs plan. So essentially what I would recommend and what I would do is to make a motion to adopt a resolution for our Clean Energy Alliance program plans as is recommended, but to add that we form a subcommittee and myself and Member Inez to meet with staff for at least one meeting to review the plan before it comes back to the board.
I'll second that.
Appreciate that. And are there any further discussions on the draft plan as it is now? Okay, so we'll go ahead and move to a vote on that.
Board Member Nunez,
Yes.
alternate Board Member Zito,
Yes.
Vice Chair Garcia,
Yes.
Chairman Lance.
Yes. Thank you for that work, and we really look forward to continuing the progress there on our programs. Next, we'll move on to public hearings, which we will have item 7, public hearing to consider adoption of expanding the super off-peak time of use period.
Thank you. I'm going to also turn this over to Caitlin for the presentation, and let's go ahead and take it away.
All right, item 7. So, this is a public hearing to consider adoption of expanding the super off-peak time of use, establishing medium commercial class, that are separate from large industrial rates. So on March 2nd, SDG&E filed an advice letter with proposed rates to go into effect on April 1st. This advice letter included several changes. Pretty packed one. So it included adjustments to extend the super off-peak time of use period to cover the entire year for the hours of 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., establish a new medium commercial customer class, increase the fare discount, which is low income discount, from 20 to 35% for commercial customers, increase the monthly service fees for commercial customers around 5 to 15% depending on customer class, and expand the medical baseline discount to untiered rate schedules, and also adjust PCIA rates. There are a few other items that were included in the advice letter, but those were the main 6 takeaways. So today, this public hearing is focused on items immediately impacting CPA operations, which are really the super off-peak period and new medium commercial class. So as you know, most customers are on a time of use rate, meaning costs vary based on the time of day, reflecting high or low demand on the grid. There are 3 periods: on peak, off peak, and super off peak. Currently, super off peak runs from 6 a.m. runs from midnight to 6 a.m. year round. And then only in the months of March and April, super off peak applies to the hours of 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So what SDG has proposed is to expand that 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Super off peak period that only applies to March and April right now to be year round. So it makes things quite more simple to understand. This will also offer customers additional opportunities to shift their load into lower cost periods. These time periods are also hours that are typically, there's higher renewable generation on the grid. So our staff is seeking to mirror the proposed TOU period changes to ensure consistency for our customers and avoid confusion. And then on the medium, large commercial customers split. Historically, there have been 2 core customer commercial classes: the small commercial class, and then the large, medium, and industrial customer class, which group all 3 into one. SDG&E is planning to establish a new medium commercial class. So now we have 3 core commercial customer classes, and then associated rate schedules. So customer class is kind of an umbrella, and then there's individual rate schedules under each customer class. So for ease of billing and customer understanding, in alignment with that April 1st timeline that SDG&E had proposed, CEA staff is proposing to also establish new rate schedules for medium commercial customers and mirror SDG&E's proposed changes on this topic. The rates themselves will remain unchanged, meaning there's no revenue impact to CEA or cost impact to the customer. And you see there in the bottom chart, it's really illustrative of what we're doing. All of the customers were in one broad rate schedule, so ALTU, secondary service, for example. And then now we're splitting that out to be ALTUM for medium-sized commercial and ALTUL for large customers. We'll establish that kind of pattern across all of our rate schedules. And then lastly, included in this advice letter, SDG&E proposed changes to PCIA rates. So shown here is a summary of how the proposed PCIA rates compare to the rates that went into effect back in January 1st of this year. You'll see there are some fairly large swings in what I would say is a short period of time. Although these changes generally benefit our customers on the commercial side. And this chart is grouped into the PCIA vintages for all of our member cities. So in the cities of Carlsbad, Del Mar, Swan Beach, Oceanside, and Vista, and then of course the current year vintage for SDG&E, we're seeing kind of the same swing across the board there. And then Escondido and San Marcos vintages see something slightly different. So staff is reviewing the proposed PCI rates and going through a more detailed review of our existing rates to understand how the proposed PCIA rates will impact the approved rate relief credit board approved back in January. So our recommendation is to adopt the resolution approving the extension of the super peak time use period and establishing medium commercial class and rate schedules to ensure consistency and avoid discrimination. Were there any public speakers on this item?
No public speakers on this item.
Any board questions or comments? I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing and approve this item. Motion, and I'll second.
Board Member Nunez,
Yes.
alternate Board Member Zito,
Yes.
Vice Chair Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Melendez.
Yes. Thank you. Now we'll move on to our regulatory updates. And then we'll present.
Thank you, Chair Melendez, members. My name is Tim Little. I'm a partner with the law firm Keys and Fox. And we're going to talk about 3 dockets today. There's the power charge and difference adjustment proceeding at the CPUC. There's the Energy Commission, or excuse me, the Public Utilities Commission Energy Division staff report on use of C or RA transactability. And there's Commission pausing the climate credit for April. So starting with the PCIA docket, this, as everybody knows, the PCIA is your departing load charge that your customers are going to pay for leaving STG's bundled service. We are reforming that charge. In this case, there are now 3 tracks in this case. The first one ended in July of last year. We are currently appealing that decision. There is track 2, which had rebuttal testimony just this past Monday. That track is going to be the main thrust of what I talked about today. We also have a potential staff report coming out in that track tomorrow. And then track 3 is going to consider broader reforms to the PCIA methodology. Comments on what should be in scope of that track 3 are up for comment tomorrow as well. So the main thrust of what I want to talk about here is what's going on in track 2. The issue in track 2 is something called banked RECs, or renewable energy credits. So unlike energy or capacity, RECs, the renewable component of renewable energy, can actually be banked for use in a later year. So you can't use energy that's generated in one moment to meet load the following year. You can't use capacity for 1 month to meet capacity needs for the following year. But you can take a renewable energy credit and bank it in order to use for a later year. So if in 2015, for example, SDG had more RECs than it needed to meet its renewable portfolio standard compliance obligations, it could take those RECs, put them into a bank, and then use them to meet their RPS obligations in, for example, 2026. The issue that we're addressing in this track 2 is that, let's say, for example, customers that were bundled in 2015 that live in Solana Beach, they left SDG service in 2017. Well, they paid for the RECs that were generated and banked in 2015. Now, SDG wants to use those RECs to meet their bundled customer compliance obligations in 2026. So CEA's customers paid for those RECs back in 2015, but if SDG uses the RECs to meet bundled customer compliance obligations in 2026, CEA's customers won't benefit from that usage because they're no longer SDG's customers. If they're not benefiting from the RECs for which they're originally paid, and bundled customers are, then CEA's customers are getting the RECs for free to bundled customers, and that's a caution. We're paying for things for which we're not benefiting from anymore. Our proposal to address this issue is pretty simple. So when the RECs are used for bundled customer compliance that CEA's customers pay for, those RECs should either be valued at the current renewable portfolio standard market price benchmark, which, as everybody knows from my fund circles that we've talked about in 1 million of these board meetings at this point. When you get a credit at the RPSNE, that reduces your PCI obligations. Your PCI rates will go down. So that's one way for your customers to benefit. The other way is to allocate the RECs to the customers that pay for them by reducing the amount of renewable energy CEA or another policy to procure. So far, utility pushback on these ideas has been mainly smoke and mirrors. They incorrectly argued that these RECs were already valued. They were not valued for the customers that we're addressing, the customers that paid for them at home, customers that later departed. They've argued that this proposal is not possible to implement, despite the fact that PG has actually implemented this exact same thing in the past 4 years. The utilities have also argued that this will reduce affordability because bundled customers would have their rates increase. Well, by not valuing these renewable energy credits necessary for the difference, CEA's rates have been higher than they otherwise should have been. Next steps in this case, we will maybe get a staff proposal on this issue tomorrow. If we do not, we'll have hearings on this issue on April 24th in San Francisco. And then after that, we will have opening and reply legal briefs, and we will eventually get a proposed decision on this issue sometime in August. The goal is to resolve this issue by September 1st, so that utilities can include this new methodology in an October update, which is the last chance that they will calculate rates for 2027. All right, changing gears. Moving on to resource advocacy or RA. The RA program asks for the Clean Energy Alliance and other load-serving entities to purchase enough capacity in order to serve their load. The issue that we're addressing at this point in the RA proceeding is called hourly transactability. The idea behind hourly transactability is that if one load-serving entity has surplus capacity that could be reallocated to other load-serving entities on an hourly basis, then aggregate procurement volumes would be reduced. If you reduce the amount of volumes that people need to procure, you can reduce costs. So in other words, you get another load-serving entity to cover a procurement obligation when they're along, and that reduces transaction costs and rates by limiting the transactions to only the hours that are needed. So Energy Division staff at the Commission issued a report on this that was released on February 23rd, but they found that potential gains do not outweigh the added complexity and risks. The problem is that their report focused on whether the proposal was necessary to enable RA compliance, but as CalCCA pointed out in comments, that kind of looked at the wrong thing. The issue is not whether transactability is needed for compliance, but whether it would increase resource efficiency and reduce costs while maintaining RA compliance. So at a time when affordability is on everyone's minds, as we just heard, pretty remarkable to me that Commission
staff, we still continue to insist and allow for more granular and less expensive transactions because RA applications. Next steps in this case is a proposed decision that will either agree with staff or it will take steps towards addressing the full.
You just step in here and remind the board that, I guess in incredible foresight, CalCCA worked with our state legislators to get some legislation in the event that this report said what it said, which is that they're not recommending that this is something to be pursued. So there is a bill authored by Senator Padilla from our area that would address this, and so it is in the legislative bill, and we'll track that as it makes its way through the legislature. But that's the sort of the belt and suspenders we're arguing at regulatory level. But in the event that doesn't bear fruit, then we've got something on the legislative front to pursue it.
All right, and then lastly, we'll talk about the California climate credit. So when California's utilities produce renewable energy, they generate climate credits that can be sold to other entities in the state. When they sell those credits, they earn revenue, and those revenues, the revenues from those sales return to ratepayers via the climate credit. So SDG&E's 2026 amount is pretty significant. It's essentially $50 off your bill twice per year. And the commission is considering in this rulemaking broader affordability related changes to the climate credit, including the timing of the distribution, the number of distributions, eligibility for distributions, and actually alternative methodologies for collectibility credit itself. So while it considers those changes, they issued this decision a week ago that essentially paused the April distribution of the credits. You get the credit in April, and you get it in October. We at CalCCA had opposed pausing the credit for affordability reasons. Customers need this refund. The commission decided to pause it anyway, but it said we will issue a full credit for 2026. We just need to figure out how we're going to move forward, and then we'll do so later this year if we have a different initial proposed decision. That proposed decision is supposed to come on Friday. All right, with the chair's blessing, happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
And just to emphasize on this last one, that one of the key points is this is a climate credit to which all customers are eligible, and including CEA's customers, particle and bundle customers.
Thank you for following this closely. Appreciate it. All right, now we will. That item concludes our meeting in open session. We will go ahead and move into a closed session items. Thank you.